Jeremy from Jeremy.net. I'm a comic book artist, writer, creator, self-published here, and I share my creative process here with you online. If you would like to get additional bonus live streams twice a month, get access to an online digital archive where you can read my comic books, if you would like to get access to a Patreon exclusive Discord server where we share feedback, process, comments, art tips, and more, you can become a Patreon subscriber for as little as $2 a month. Head on over to patreon.com/Jeremy. That's patreon.com/GERIMI. If you'd like to get a free digital sketchbook, work in progress animated GIFs delivered right to your inbox, blog posts about what I'm reading, what I'm watching, what's inspiring me creatively, you can sign up for my free monthly newsletter at newsletter.jeremy.net. And if you'd like to purchase physical copies of my comic books, or if you read digitally on Comixology or Kindle, you can head on over to amazon.jeremy.net. You can pick up books like my first graphic novel, Eye of the Gods. It is a psychological thriller about a man cursed with visions he cannot control. It's a standalone book. You can also pick up my most recent project, Morning Star. It tells the story of Lucifer's fall from heaven as a Western. It's an 8-issue series. Volume 1 contains issues 1 through 4. Volume 2 contains issues 5 through 8, the conclusion to the series. Both editions have extensive back matter, script excerpts, character sketches and designs, page layouts, photo reference, thumbnails, and more. And on the homepage of my YouTube channel, you can check out book flip-throughs of all of those books. So, let's see here. I see Byron in the chat. Hey, how you doing? Thanks for rolling in here. Just another day at the drawing table. Let's see here. So we are working on this Medusa. Let me zoom out a little bit so people can get some context. So this is a piece that I'm working on, another in my series of Medusa images. Now, I think last week I was working on lighting passes, and I believe that I had drawn this one first. And I was kind of wrapping this up, with light kind of raking across the panel, breaking through a cloudy sky. And I think I probably need to go in here and reinforce a little bit more of the clouds in the background to give you that sense that, the shaft of light is specifically a break in the clouds. I'm wondering if I might also want to put a couple of streaks in the background to help reinforce that, but that might draw too much attention away and make the thing too complicated. So it's neither here nor there. The second lighting version I did, which I think I did separately, and I don't think you guys saw, was me doing lighting in the foreground, being lit from below. Much more kind of theatrical, dramatic lighting. And I like the first one better, but this is a good alternative. This is a good one too. Now, the odds are I'm going to go with the first one, so that's what I like the most. But what I'm doing right now is taking a step back from the lighting. Well, that's odd. Oh, that's because I had a whole layer that was that has my lighting in it. All right, so what I'm doing right now is I'm just refining the actual underdrawing. And specifically, there is a woman here, a statue that has a hooded robed figure. And she's got her hands in her face. And I needed some reference for how, because the hood just wasn't looking right and the robes weren't looking right. So I looked up, just Googled statue robed woman, and I found almost exactly the pose I was looking for. So crazy, go figure that. So I'm drawing her from a different angle. So I'm kind of using the reference just to get a sense of the shape of the folds, and I'm trying to reposition them so that they work with my illustration. So that is what we're doing at the moment. But the larger point is that at this stage, what I'm doing is I'm trying to go through and refine all of the figures so I can start putting a final ink line over them and move them from kind of the loose, sketchy line that I have here. Like, to be honest, the finished line I have isn't much more cleaned up than the Medusa drawing here. So the idea is, I guess, to bring the rest of them to about that same level of detail, having the faces feel constructed and finished, redrawing over them without the construction lines. finish all of that up. And another interesting thing that I noticed in doing the lighting pass is that there is a another figure down here that's headless. There's a headless body laying next to this Zeus figure. And I've decided I'm probably not going to make it a point to work lightning bolts into there and really make it feel like Zeus. Like originally, I intended to make every single one of these a specific Greek god and make you clearly be able to tell who it was. But I don't feel like that's actually really necessary for this. Overall, you get the feeling, the tone of it. Um, but in doing the lighting pass, I really felt like I tried drawing some things in this left hand lower left hand corner, um, below the spear, Athena's spear, and by Zeus's head. This this region, that's an erase tool. That's supposed to do anything. This region right here, I tried letting some of the background bleed through there, or maybe have something that's still behind this shaft of light, but maybe at a lower opacity. And I think that it's actually stronger if I just leave that as light with nothing behind it. I think that putting something back there might kind of distract from everything that's going on in the central focus of the piece. So that said, I think as I'm coming in here and I'm refining the sketch and the drawing, I'm going to leave that out of this part back here, which means I'm going to have to figure out how exactly I want to have Athena's feet disappear. Because originally, I'm not trying to hide the feet. It's just it's a position where it looked weird to have her feet sticking down out of there. So I don't know. Maybe I'll finish the feet and just put her sandal standing on a rock. I have not figured that part out yet, but the stage that I'm in now is the figuring out. What are the final details I want in the piece? Pardon me, gotta blow my nose. I don't know why my allergies always seem to act up whenever I'm on stream. All right. So, like I said, I pulled some reference. And the challenge that I'm having here is putting enough detail in that it feels like a solid structural object, but not so much detail that it becomes distracting. And the balance of detail, as in almost all things art, it's a fine line. It is a very fine line. Yeah. It's something that I constantly have to battle with. And I think it's something that I've become less and less detailed, I'd like to think, over time. And it's because a skilled artist knows how to use detail in the right places. And I discovered early on in my artistic career that I was using detail to cover up my the weaknesses in my drawing. And I intentionally really tried to move away from that because I felt like having less detail in my work was the only way I was going to get better at the actual structural drawing, is by taking away that crutch. And I've been doing it long enough that I feel like I've gotten better and I can add more detail back in, but I'm still often very, very suspect when I see a piece getting too detailed. The first thing I want to do is strip as much of that detail out as possible and see how much I can convey with as little detail as possible. And I guess the challenge that I'm having right now, and I keep drawing and erasing, is if I turn this back off, let's just get rid of the reference for a minute there. So right here, I feel like I should lock that layer so I don't accidentally draw on it. I feel like I've got the head worked out and the shoulder worked out. These pieces, these physical elements, they feel like what I want them to feel like. And as hard as hands are to draw, I'm actually pretty happy with the hands too. The problem I'm having, and this area that I keep drawing and erasing and drawing and erasing, and I'm going to warn you now, I may spend the entire live stream just drawing and erasing this arm, is I have a bent arm, her arm coming down and then coming back up to cover her face, and it's behind the arm of the Gorgon sitting on the throne. And the challenge that I am constantly battling here is I'm trying to, and I know that when it comes to working with color, I can probably do this in color and use that as a tool to help me differentiate. Well, I mean, obviously it's going to be a statue versus a flesh and blood Gorgon, but I never want to say, well, I'll fix it with color or I'll fix it with tone or value. I really want to get it right in the drawing stage, where there's a sense of separation between the arm that is here in it, that the arm that I'm drawing right now that's behind the Gorgon versus the arm of the Gorgon. So I have to make these two arms feel separate and distinct, and not have the one behind distract from the one in front. So I'm trying to figure out how much detail I need in the arm behind versus the arm in front. I'm trying to decide, do I want to leave like as little detail as possible, or do I want to go the opposite and separate these two by detail as pattern? And what I mean by that is, or detail as tone. That's kind of a way that I think of it. What I mean by that is I can very easily separate this foreground from the arm in the background by simply just putting some cross hatching in here. I could just come in and say, we're actually not even cross hatching. Let's just do hatching in the direction of the limb. Like that. Sort of like a Franklin Booth type effect. If you've ever seen somebody who, like if you look at Frank Cho and the beautiful pen and ink ballpoint pen drawings that he does, you can see that's very similar. If you've never seen Franklin Booth, then Frank Cho is another guy you can look at and see a modern day artist who's doing that effect. Or let's go to the comic book master, Bernie Wrightson. Bernie Wrightson, that's a guy who uses detail as tone. Now, right now, I'm doing hatching. It is just hatching. It is only lines to represent a tone. Now, by doing that, I've pushed the arm and back. I've pushed it farther into the background. And what I am suggesting here, let me just undo. Gotta be careful not to undo too much. All right, there we go. What I'm suggesting is you can use actual detail, like for instance, just folds in fabric and I can make a pattern out of those folds. And you can get a similar effect. But instead of using just what would be, I don't know, quote unquote random seeming tones, you can try to draw the movement of the fabric, the folds of the fabric, and use that as a pattern, a visual pattern. The challenge is that you have to be really good at drawing folds to do that. See, it's a catch 22. Um, it looks better if you can pull it off, but it's not easy to pull off. And you might say, well, if it's hard, then why are you doing it that way, dumbass? Well, it's because I like to push myself. Um, I've always said that a big part of this live stream is me showing my own personal art struggles, the challenges that I face, or challenges I put upon myself to try and grow as an artist. And a large part of that is attempting to do things that I know are difficult, things that I haven't done successfully in the past. But if I just gave up on something because it was hard, I would never have learned to ink comic books traditionally with a brush, because I've been trying to do it since I was in high school. I've been trying to do it since I was probably 15 or 16. Um, and I think I've told this story multiple times now, but every few years as a teenager and even into my 20s, I would attempt to ink with a brush and I'd get frustrated. I'd be like, all right, I can't do this. Then I'd look at some other artist who's doing beautiful brush work, and I'd say, damn, that looks good. I really need to come back and revisit this. And it wasn't until probably in my late 20s, early 30s, when I really started to get a sense of how to get the tools to do what I want. And you might say, well, why do you waste all that time trying to do that if you're working digitally now? Well, I'm not always going to work digital. In fact, I really need to carve out time just to do brush and ink sketches, just to keep that skill set limber. While working digitally is very, very advantageous for making comics, um, it doesn't mean that I'm going to work this way forever. All right. I'm working more zoomed in than I normally would, because I think the other danger, and I think everyone who works digital is aware of this, is that danger of zooming in and drawing a bunch of crap that when you zoom out, no one's going to be able to see. But I don't think I would be able to accurately show you what I'm doing if I wasn't zoomed in. If I were working at the distance I'd normally work at, this would just look like a bunch of like scratchy lines. In fact, I'd maybe zoom in that much. And I will tell you that as I'm looking at this, I gave that whole speech about using detail as tone and texture. And I'm looking at this and it is too distracting. It's too distracting. I don't know if you guys get that sense, but when I look at this right here, the arm all just seems to jump out because of that detail. So what I'm going to try and do here is go with my eraser and maybe leave just a couple of folds. And for the most part, try to get it to feel like the rest of the hooded figure. That's probably really more of what I should be aiming for. Is not necessarily super differentiated tone between this and the forearm, but I've got like just the right balance of detail. I think in the hooded figure itself, like the head and shoulders I started at the beginning, where I said that I'm happy with. So if I can get the level of detail here to feel the same as the level of detail above it, I'll consider that a win. Let's see here. You know, like I said, this is it's not the most fascinating part of doing an illustration. And it's certainly not as sexy as doing speed painting where you're just like knocking out like lines and just making a whole composition seem to appear out of thin air like magic. But getting to the level of skill where you can make something really, really good, really, really fast. I look at that as like walking before you can run and crawling before you can walk. Because when I take my time and I really craft a piece, I can make something that I'm happy with. And I find that when I just rush for the sake of rushing, I frequently am displeased with the results. And maybe it is a fairy tale, but I keep telling myself that if I am diligent and focused and take my time, that I will eventually build up the speed where a lot of the stuff that I'm vocalizing and verbalizing right now will just come out instinctually. That it's not something that I need to very carefully, strategically plan out. Trying to do more with less. That's what's happening right now. Okay, that's too big. So the challenge I'm having here is placing these folds so that they don't create a tangent with the part of the sleeve that's going over the shoulder above. But I also don't want them to create a tangent with the armband that the Gorgon is wearing. And I could fix that by making the armband wider, moving it up a little bit. So the tangents I'm trying to avoid are here, here, and then here. And it's really about making these two folds that are this on either side of that line I just made. Trying to get those just right. Okay. I'm putting a little dip in here. Just so that this fold makes more sense, giving this fold the sense that it is moving down, and then a small piece of the fabric is underneath and coming back up. All right, I feel like this is pretty close to satisfying for me. You guys know that I can nitpick forever on my work. Just go through, tweak, and change and fuss. I don't know how much of the other hand we really need to see. Maybe we don't need to see it at all. But the storytelling part of me says, well, wait a minute. If she's got her face covered, how did she get turned to stone? And that makes me want to go like this and put in 1, 2, 3, 4. Those 4 lines. Those 4 lines implying that she peaked. And that's how she got turned to stone. It's a very, very subtle detail. I don't even know how necessary it is. Maybe it's not necessary at all. I don't know. All right. So that one's good. The next thing I wanted to fix, well, there's a couple more details. I'll show you, these are the things that this piece needs. One, I need to fix the harp that Apollo's going to be playing. Two, I need to flush out Athena's face. Three, Hades' face. And four, this is going to be Ares, and I'm still not happy with my Ares. Let's see here. Byron says, looking more at the Athena, part of me wonders if her current post and composition makes it too easy for a tangent to happen with Medusa. Well, I think that's a reasonable concern. There's always fretting for tangents. Tangents are one of my big things that I'm constantly trying to fight and get rid of. But the weird thing that I have is that she's going to be the Medusa part. Let me put the lighting back on here. I'm going to have it fall into shadow, so I don't really mind that. And one of the things that I'm doing is I'm trying to position this so that the arm that's holding the front of the spear is going to be broken, such that as a statue, it's going to be sort of attached to her thigh, and then the upper part is going to be separate. But I feel like the way that it disappears into the shadows, I can see the line where a tangent could happen, which is this line right here of her torso. If I were to continue that line directly behind her, that would make a tangent. But whoa, let me turn that back off. But what I'm going to try and do instead is have her torso twisting. And I'm going to try and use the shapes of that twisting so that when it does run behind her arm, it's not going to be, the lines that go back there won't be tangents. So if I have her twisting this way, then have her torso, her pelvis, twist the other way. And again, this is another one of those where it's complicated because of all the overlapping forms. And then also the fact that I have like a big meaty thigh. And here's a place where there totally could have been a tangent. Well, I just drew a tangent right there, but there's a big thigh there. And I don't know. I haven't really worked out what god it was going to be, whose knee this was. Maybe it's a Titan because the knee is so much bigger than the other gods. Which means I would have to adjust the position of Athena's thigh a bit. In fact, to work this out, maybe the whole being broken and resting on the thigh doesn't work. Maybe this arm is just floating in the air, being held by the spear. in which case I may end up just separating that completely. But no, I mean, you raise good points. The fact of the matter is that when I'm doing this stage of fixing the layout drawing, because this isn't even what I would consider, it's not like I'm drawing the final drawing. This is, if I were to go back to another piece. So, the Gorgon piece that I was working on, the Gorgon emerging, this one I'm starting to get into the color phase, and yeah, it's a very dark piece, so I'm still gonna have to work out those details. But if you know what, let me take all of these color layers and group those just so I can start turning layers on and off without getting lost here. Um, yeah, my background color is really dark. Makes it hard for you guys to see anything. Um, I don't want to mess with my background color because I'm actually using the background color in the final piece. So let me just insert a layer and fill that with white. So, this is a cleaned up drawing, but before getting to this drawing, there's another layer underneath that is basically what I'm doing. What I'm doing now in that other piece is this drawing where it's very, very rough, but it's all about fixing and moving, describing where things are just making things that look flat feel volumetric, drawing things as cubes and blocks. So it's like it's got all the proportions and all the angles, everything for me to then go over and do a final line. But the reason why I bring this up is specifically because at this stage, this is the stage where I'm constantly creating and destroying tangents. So, it's not that I want to create tangents, but this is the place where I go, oh, this piece is a little too big. Let me make it smaller. I make it smaller. All of a sudden, there's a tangent. All right, let me move a piece of the other drawing that's next to correct that tangent. Okay, now the shape of the thing or it flows differently. Let me see if I can fix the flow. So it is a constant ebb and flow, a back and forth in terms of that dance of the tangents, the tango of the tangents, as it were. And for me, honestly, a huge part of drawing is just dancing the tango of tangents. Once I get to the point where I have, let me get rid of this. Once I have a fairly fixed line drawing, then it's just, it's just coloring and tone and just, tweaking. But for me, the majority of what is the art making is going in here, fixing tangents, moving things around, adjusting the structure. And it's funny, I wasn't planning to start working on the Athena part right away, but just the little discussion, that little tangent we took right there made me think, all right, let me get in here and fix her torso because the arms, where they're going to attach and the type of tangents that they're going to make are decided by the structure of her torso. So it would be wise for me to come in here. Whoops. Let me just grab this color. It would be wise for me to come in here and fix this at this stage and almost treat it like the way when you see video game in concept art books, a lot of times when they're doing a character turnaround and they'll show you the profile, they'll do like two profiles, one with the arms attached and one without the arms attached. So you can see what exactly is happening to the figure's anatomy when the arms are going to move. And looking at this, I feel like I definitely need to properly give that sense of how this is going to twist and turn. Because if I've got this cube facing this way, and I want to have the cube of her pelvis facing this way, and maybe tilted at kind of an extreme angle. Now, doing this made me realize I have to tilt. If I want it to look right, I've got to tilt her rib cage towards us even more. Um, which now we get into tricky territory because what this means is her whole upper body, even with the twisting, is going to be at a very foreshortened angle. And foreshortened angles are difficult to draw convincingly until you get really good at it. I mean, when you look at Jack Kirby and all of the foreshortened angles he draws, you're like, psh, the man was drawing like, 4 to 8 pages of comics a day, and he was drawing all these amazingly foreshortened figures. You're like, how hard could it be? It's hard as hell. He's just really, really good at it. Um, which goes back to the thing I was saying about drawing things, challenging myself. Doing things that I know I'm either not good at or just doing things that I know are really hard that some might look at me and question my sanity in terms of, well, why are you beating yourself up, making yourself do these really, really hard things? Is because doing the really, really hard things is the only way to make the hard things easier. 47 is says, I think you're at pretty good level. I appreciate that. Thank you very much. It is actually really nice to hear from my peers every once in a while, um, you know, that my work isn't like a dumpster fire. Because last night I was actually looking through the book Framed Ink 2 by Marcos Martin Mestre. I believe that's how you pronounce his name. Great concept artist for film and animation, and did a lot of stuff for DreamWorks. His whole Framed series is really amazing. Framed Ink 1 and 2, Framed Perspective 1 and 2, framed drawing techniques. They're all great. The point being is that I was looking through Framed Ink 2 the other night, last night, and I was just it's one of those things where sometimes it hits you and you're just like, wow, I'm never going to be able to do this as well as he does it. And sometimes that hits you and it takes the wind out of your sails. And I know that he did not make that book to discourage anybody. I mean, that book is an educational tool. And if you read it, if you read any of his framed books, you can tell that what he wants is to encourage artists. He wants to say, these are how I do what I do. I want to show you as much as possible so you can use these tools, make them your own, and make beautiful work. But just looking at just like he makes the concepts of composition look so simple. And I was just reading it, I'm just like, wow. It almost made me say, nothing I do is ever going to be as good as any of the drawings in this book. And it almost made me say, why am I bothering? Um, But and I share this because that happens to all of us. I mean, I hear that from a lot of you guys sometimes, like feeling a little bit defeated in your work or needing encouragement. I don't want you to think that I am above that in any way, shape, or form. I hit that too. There's times when I feel the whole, why do I bother? It's never going to be any good. Why am I banging my head against the wall? Just leave it to people that are better than I am. But what gets me through that is that at the end of the day, I enjoy drawing and I enjoy making art. That's why I bother, is because, you know, I want to be better because I want to be good at the thing that I really enjoy. But it's the enjoyment that keeps me at this in the first place. Let me see if I can push this pelvis a little bit, tilt it down a little bit more. So we're kind of looking even more foreshortened into down at her rib cage. In fact, let me diagram this on the side because sometimes that's what I need is I just need to look at a diagram. Um, so let's say that we're looking at a box from above. That's what I'm trying to draw here. So I'm trying to draw a box from above, but it's a box that is not completely square because I realized I started drawing it like that and needs to be not as deep as I drew it. When I say not as deep, I mean not heading back that way as far. Deep versus width or height. So when I say deep, that's depth. The D, height, width. Just giving you a sense of the terms that I'm using to talk about boxes. And 47 is with the spirit of art making. He said that's the big reason because we love doing it. Truth, truth. Thank you. So I know I could just undo. I don't know why I'm taking the time to erase this box, especially because I'm going to erase all of this eventually anyway. Um, these are just thinking props. And the fact of the matter is that if I can't convincingly do boxes at the angle that I want, then what makes me think I would be able to do this with something as complex as the human figure? So again, you guys have heard me harp on and on and on about like using boxes and cylinders and primitive forms to build things. Um, yeah, if you can't do this with boxes, you just make simple rectangles and squares feel like they're coming towards you in perspective or away from you in perspective, then it's not going to work when you draw full figures. That's the point of understanding primitive forms. And I'm just putting in little placeholders for the arm and the neck. Here, I'll zoom in a little bit more. Sometimes I turn up and I look at the screen because what you guys are looking at on the screen, it looks much larger to me drawing on my tablet than it does when I look up and I look at the monitor. So, I mean, that may not be true. If you guys were watching this full screen on your monitor while I'm drawing, then it might look huge. But for me, drawing here and having the second screen so I can kind of look up and see what you guys are seeing, it looks tiny to me. And that's why I'm like, oh wait, let me zoom in a little bit so you guys can see. But on my own, I tend to draw a little bit. Like I'm just repeating myself. Drawing further out keeps me from putting details in there that I don't need. the digital equivalent of stepping back from your canvas and uh, and seeing how things should look. In fact, I was working with my wife last night. She was doing some graphic design for her Etsy shop, our Etsy shop. I mean, we built the thing together, but really, she does all pretty much all the designs, and I just give her technical feedback and tips, just because I've been doing design longer than her. She's definitely come an amazing distance. She's come a long way in a very, very short amount of time. Um, but one of the things that we were talking about was like her trying to decide on some changes on a particular shirt, and I gave her my feedback on how I would approach it, but I said, it's not for me to tell you do this particular thing, because I, from years of working doing graphic design, I'm used to getting feedback where sometimes it's feedback that improves the piece, and sometimes it's feedback that just changes the piece. It's not better or worse, it's just different. Um, and sometimes that's simply because the person who's giving the feedback has a different view, has a different viewpoint of what will make this successful, what will make it good. And if that person's the person, writing the checks, then you got to do what they say. And sometimes they give you feedback and you're like, oh, wait, I see it. This is better. And that's always the best feedback. But my point is I told her that this was a case where I very much was not sure whether the advice I was giving her would really make it better or worse, and that she should keep a separate version of her file. That's the way it currently was. And then maybe have make a duplicate and try what I suggested. And then on top of that, try some more experiments. So I said a lot of the times it's really the experimenting that leads you to a good design. It's not the design knowledge, it's the searching. Design knowledge helps you search more efficiently. Experience with the tools, experience with what you've tried before, experience with just concepts of composition and structure. Those things can help you get to the answer faster. But exploration is how you find the answer. At least well, you know what? I should say that that's more opinion than fact, because I think that design experience, what it gets you is it's not just that you can get to the answer quicker, but you have a sense of tried and true compositions, tried and true techniques. When you've drawn something similar before or designed something similar before, and you can say, all right, this might not be the most groundbreaking design, but this will effectively show what I'm trying to show. Meaning that you can take a piece and say, all right, it's not going to be an A plus plus design, but you know that if you do A, B, and C, if you just do like these couple of steps and these tweaks, you'll have something that is a B plus A minus. You know, it's something that will do the job. And it's really up to you whether you really want to push for the A plus. Hashtag perfectionism. So what I'm doing here now is I'm analyzing this structure for Athena's torso. I've got a rough sketch above, and now I want to see what happens if I make this even more foreshortened. And the challenge here is that with this level of foreshortening, her torso will feel kind of squat now. And I do not want her torso to feel squat. I want it to feel bent towards us, but I don't want it to feel squat. And by squat, I just mean shorter than it should be, like more dwarven. Because Athena is a tall, elegant, Amazonian warrior. Not Amazonian from the Amazons, but Well, actually, no. I think that she was the goddess that the Amazons worshipped. I again, for someone who's doing research on a comic on Greek mythology, you'd think that I would have better knowledge of the Amazons, but they don't play a particularly large. They don't loom large in the story that I'm telling. So now, the thing about this that I just sketched here is I pushed it a little too far. So now I've got her torso facing this way, and I've got her pelvis facing this way. And I really need torso facing this way, pelvis facing. Well, I guess they're facing similar directions, except one is coming out this way, the other one is coming more profile. So what I want is that center line of her body. And now, hopefully, you guys can get a better sense of what I'm talking about in terms of trying to make a volume feel like what it's supposed to be in simple blocks and cylinders. You can see now more of how these subtle differences, each one suggests a different gesture in terms of the posture of the figure. And that's why tweaking these things in this simple area, in this simple format, will help me work out the gesture and the exact positions of the figure. Let's see here. Some spam. Let me get rid of this. There we go. 47ness says, yeah, if it serves the interest of the story, you're doing it right. I love the old joke about Chinese restaurants. He says, you want the B rating because it means you're getting more customers in and out and not worrying about being squeaky clean. Let's see here. Yeah, we had a minor bot invasion. So what I'm gonna do is take this upper sketch. Let's see if I can move this someplace where I don't need to delete it, but get it kind of out of the way. Move that up there. Because the difference is that the bottom sketch has the proportions I want, but the pelvis is facing the wrong direction. The upper one is a bit more elongated, but it is facing the directions I want. So let's just make this easy on myself and grab this, copy paste, move it up, and just erase that pelvis and try again. The beauty of working digital. So let's start here by saying, all right, let's turn this. Just turn in these boxes. Alright. Mhm. Now this is feeling closer to what I want to see going on in the actual piece. Now the one below, this one does feel more dynamic because of how strong the twist of the torso is, but it'll mess up a lot of what I have going on in the composition if her thigh that's stepping forward is now moving inward into the composition. Like if it's moving inward towards the Gorgon, that will really mess things up. And that's a big reason for wanting to make this adjustment so that I can have her torso foreshortened the way I want it. Then I can have this leg bent and coming forward. So I think I have found the basic structure that will convey what I want it to convey. And based on that, I can take this. Oh, no, I don't want to merge all of those. Undo. Bad Procreate. Just want to merge these two. All right. Now I can go in and erase these other parts that I don't need. I can come back in here and just redo. I mean, to be honest, I can just erase all this and just drop all of that in there. I just happen to really like her head the way that I have it positioned. So I kind of want to erase everything else but leave the parts that are working for me. And the time goes by super fast. So we're already at an hour here. I'm going to bring things in for a landing very, very shortly. Basically, after I get this box worked in here. So if anybody has any last minute questions or comments, smoke them if you got them. Otherwise, we'll be back here next week. All right, I am going to have to erase her head in order to get this the way I really want it. Well, you know what? I still got that fin underneath there. I've got that understructure. You know what? Now that I look at this, I'm like, I'm being stupid by being so obsessed with keeping it exactly the way. There's a light sketch underneath. So I can totally take the sketch that I have above, duplicate it, pose it, erase it, and drop it in. So I'm just going to go ahead and get rid of these lines. Copy, paste. Let's move this down here. and just get it into position. See. That looks like that's about good. Now I can kind of erase around. Now see right here, that's where I get a tangent. Her hip is running tangent to the gauntlet that's on Medusa's hip. And so I have two choices. Well, I've got a few different choices. I can adjust the gauntlet position. I can adjust the position of Athena. I can scale her down. I'm going to try moving her slightly to the right and then also reducing her a tiny bit. Nope. Sometimes you just look at something and you're like, nah, that's not it. Let me undo. I forget when you're moving what the, because when you're doing hue saturation or other things, there's a way to just cancel a command. But I forget when it's a move, how you cancel. So I'll just undo. Yeah, I'm looking at this and I actually feel like it's probably better off to redraw the gauntlet that is on her rather than this position that I had. Something tells me that compositionally that position is just right, and I'm better off tweaking the gauntlet or cheating the gauntlet than I am trying to tweak Athena's body position. Let's see here. Byron says, time flies when you're having fun. Sure does. You know, this is what I really needed. I haven't got much time to do very much artwork at all this weekend. So the nice thing is I know that no matter what, I've always got the live stream with you guys where I can sit down and focus and just, and jam. 47 it says, when this happens to me, I just throw in some extra atmosphere to break the tangent. Well, you know what? That would work in most cases. It's only the fact that these two figures are standing right next to each other. That's the thing that makes me say, okay, I'll keep it as is. And I think that for the moment, I'm going to leave the Athena body on a separate layer just so it gives me a little bit of leeway in case I do have to move stuff more. But all I really need is to just bring her gauntlet in a little bit. Now the problem with that is now it makes her arm look shorter than I wanted it to. I kind of liked the idea of having the really long gauntlets and giving her long, elegant feeling forearms. So what happens if I actually, now that's a possibility that I did not really consider. What happens if I do the opposite? What happens if I move her even further to the right? So this way, instead of a tangent, what you now are getting is a T overlap, where her hip, the back line of her hip, is sort of like it's pointing at this juncture between the bend and her elbow. So it's not hitting a surface that creates a tangent. Instead, it's kind of like it's pointing at a transitional form. Now with that, I can go back and make her gauntlet a little bit longer. And go back to that long elegance that I was trying to capture. Yeah, I think that actually works. And if it doesn't, well, I can keep playing with it. It's minor details at this point. Okay, guys. So on that note, if you enjoy these live streams and want to get 2 bonus live streams a month, not just for an hour, but for like 2.5, 3 hours, you can become a Patreon subscriber for as little as $2 a month. Get access to 2 bonus Patreon exclusive live streams twice a month. You get access to an online digital archive where you can read my comic books. You get access to our Patreon exclusive Discord server where we share tips, feedback, process, talk shop throughout the week. All that for as little as $2 a month. There's higher tiers for higher rewards, or just if you want to show some love. And if you would like to get a free digital sketchbook, get work in progress animated gifts delivered right to your inbox. If you would like to get blog posts about what I'm reading, what I'm watching, what's inspiring me creatively, you can sign up for my free monthly newsletter at newsletter.jeremy.net. And if you'd like to purchase physical copies of my comic books or read digitally on Comixology or Kindle, you can go to amazon.jeremy.net. You can pick up books like my first graphic novel, standalone psychological thriller about a man cursed with visions he cannot control. It's called Eye of the Gods. You can also pick up my most recent comic book series, Morning Star. It tells the story of Lucifer's fall from heaven as a Western. It's an 8-issue series. Volume 1 contains issues 1 through 4. Volume 2 contains issues 5 through 8. Both have extensive back matter, script excerpts, character designs, thumbnails, page layouts, photo reference, and more. Basically show you how to put the whole comic book together. And on the home page of my YouTube channel, there are book flip-through videos. You can actually see what's inside the book before you pick it up. If you're watching on Twitch, there's links to all of these in the About Me tab. So again, everybody, thank you for spending time, for hanging out, talking shop, talking process. That's it for now. Go be creative.